This is a Mazda Miata, specifically the RF, which stands for Retractable Fastback, and it's a great little sports car. But here's the thing. This generation, coined the ND, was originally unveiled in 2014, and we are nearing 2024. That means that it's been almost a decade since this car was released, and it hasn't had any real major changes or notable updates other than a couple of software things, adding Apple CarPlay, etc. So that begs the question, is the Miata still worth buying today, or has it aged into the pages of history? Well, that's what we're going to find out in today's video.
Let's start with the boring stuff. In the front, it has a Skyactiv G 2.0 4-cylinder with dual overhead cams and no turbochargers or electric motors. This is the only engine configuration available, and it produces 181 horsepower and 151 pound-feet of torque. Drive goes to the rear wheels only via 2 transmissions, the 6-speed manual that I have here, or an optional 6-speed auto. 0 to 60 is done with in 5.7 seconds with the manual and soft top.
Back in 1989, when the Miata was originally released, it was entering into a market where inexpensive roadsters didn't really exist to that large of a degree. It had a starting MSRP of $14,000. Now, if you adjust that for inflation, in today's money, that's around 34 grand. That means that this car's actually gotten cheaper over the years because the soft top version starts at $28,050. If you go for this RF edition, it's going to be $35,750. Now, when the Miata did come out, it took the world by storm by becoming the most successful roadster of all history ever in the automotive industry. By the year 2000, they shifted over 500,000 units. And while I couldn't find official exact figures for how many have sold up to today, my research suggests that that number has risen over 1.2 million units. Now, that may not sound like a lot when you compare it to something like a Honda Civic, but you have to consider something very important. This only has 2 doors. It only has 2 seats, enough storage capacity for maybe a number 2 pencil, and it's a roadster. So I wouldn't jump to call this car practical, and for that reason, you have to ask yourself, what is it about this car that makes it so popular, that made it so successful? Well, the formula doesn't really seem to be all that complicated, and over the years, it hasn't changed that much either.
It's fun, it's cheap, and it's fun. They took a formula that worked in the early 90s and just kept remaking it. Now, it's true, it has less horsepower than a base Toyota Camry, but where the Camry, and indeed everything else in this world, keeps getting bigger and heavier, the Miata isn't. It weighs just under 2,500 pounds, just like the original car back in 1989. Less weight allows you to have less power without feeling sluggish. It does have a simple interior, I'll bet, with all of the technology you could really need in this sort of a car. It's got Apple CarPlay, which is wireless in this trim, heated seats, manual buttons and knobs, all so that you can focus on the pleasures of driving and just feel around for anything that's familiar, instead of having touchscreens all over the place. Crucially, it also has a 6-speed manual and, of course, an open-top experience. That's it. That's all this car has to offer, and I think that's why it's so successful.
Mazda didn't waste time trying to change the Miata. They kept its personality at its core, while other manufacturers that were making similar cars were just chasing numbers. More power, more technology, which meant more weight and, of course, more money. The formula for the Miata was largely the same: a lightweight, fun sports roadster for cheap. The original Miata was actually inspired by the Lotus Elan, and we all know Lotus's mantra, simplify and add lightness. With the Miata, it seems to me that Mazda perfected that ideology. The Miata was never about setting the fastest lap record at your local track. It wasn't about being the hero at the drag strip that everybody was cheering on, although if you took a Miata to a drag strip, people probably would cheer you on just for the comic relief. It was never going to be the coolest, it was never going to be the fastest, but I firmly believe that the person driving the Miata is probably the happiest. And that's what this car is all about. It's about driving enjoyment. The market for cars of this nature is getting smaller and smaller, and the Miata answers some pretty important criteria. The two-door sports car feel, offers a manual transmission, rear-wheel drive, driving dynamics, front-mount engine. What other options do you really have, especially at this price point? The only thing that really comes to mind is the GR86, and you can't get that as an open-top car. Honestly, I understand people are gonna talk crap about the Miata. Oh, it's a hairdresser's car, it's a girl's car, whatever. Let them say whatever they want. You're buying your car for yourself. Deep down, I think everybody enjoys the open-top driving experience. And the reality is, the Miata gives you that at a great price, reliably. In fact, if you want a two-door sports car offered as a manual that's a convertible other than this, I think the next cheapest option is the Mustang EcoBoost, if I'm not mistaken, and that's a $10,000 premium over this Miata. That's a pretty big price gap. If this car truly is all about driving, what is it like to drive? Well, it's very nice. It's very easy to enjoy because it's very easy to drive. The engagement point on the clutch is right where you would want it to be, and it's quite forgiving. Naturally aspirated, so the throttle response is linear, it's predictable. And this gearbox is fantastic. The throws are very short. It's really easy to rev match this car, and that's a very rewarding feeling when you get that perfect rev match where it's very, very smooth. In fact, if you want to learn how to drive manual, I think the Miata is probably a great place to start. It's what a manual transmission was always intended to be. Fun to drive, easy to manage. Is this a fast car? No, not really. It has under 200 horsepower, so it's not enough horsepower for you to really get yourself into major trouble, but that's part of its appeal, at least to me. You have to understand why you're going after a Miata. And for that reason, you can forgive that it has less power because you can still have plenty of fun. There are some compromises that have to be made and have to be mentioned. As you would imagine, it's quite a small car, both on the inside and in terms of storage capacity. And for that reason, I've had to push the seat uncomfortably close to the pedals in order to be able to recline it so I can fit my head. That of course means that every time I use the clutch, I saw off millimeters of my left knee. Also, I'm filming, so I have to bring equipment with me, and not all of it fits, so I had to leave some of it behind. And what I did bring with me is largely taking up my passenger seat. Also, the infotainment screen is a little bit dated, it has to be said, and it's not that responsive. It's actually about as responsive as your cat when you call its name. And for those of you that don't have a cat, they don't really listen all that well. But you have to keep that in mind when you're buying a car like this. I didn't consider all of these things, and I actually bought a Mazda Miata RF a few years ago. Test drove it with the roof off, loved the car, signed paperwork, bought the car. On the way home, I put the roof on and realized that I didn't quite fit in the car, so I had to take it back. A little bit of a humiliating experience, so if you do buy one of these, make sure you test drive it with the roof on. I think the Miata deserves more credit than it gets, and this is why. We look at these car manufacturers and we ask the question, why can't we have the cars of our youth? Why doesn't the Supra look and feel the way the Supra used to? Why doesn't the GTR come as a manual? And how did the NSX suddenly become so expensive? We want the cars that we grew up with, and we want them the way that we grew up with them, but they don't make them that way anymore. Mazda kind of does. I mean, it's not exactly the same as the original Miata, but it's pretty close. It definitely follows the same formula, and it's still affordable. You can still get it. If you grew up loving the NSX, you gotta work pretty hard to be able to get the new NSX, and when you get it, it's not gonna live up to what you thought of as the NSX back when you were a kid. So I think Mazda really deserves credit for that. And that brings me to the main point of this video. Is the Miata still worth buying today? I'm gonna say yes. And the reason is quite simple. The justification to yourself why you wanted a Miata back in the 90s and the early 2000s and whatever is still the same reason why you would want a Miata today. There's no logic behind it. You just want a fun, cheap, reliable roadster. The Miata is largely the same that it was back then. So if the reason is the same and the car is the same, I think you should still get the Miata. It does the job that it was made to do. It still makes you smile. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and much thanks to Cardinale Mazda for loaning me this beautiful example of the Miata RF. They've got a couple of these, so I'll leave the links in the description below for you to be able to check them out. Just let them know that CarCave sent you so I can get more cars to play with. Other than that, comment your thoughts on the Miata down below. Do you agree with me, disagree, why? Like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. It supports the channel, which is awesome. And it's also so you don't miss a post. But until that next one, thanks so much for watching, and take care.